Good evening. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. We will be going through items as are listed on the agenda, although I believe there's only one item listed on the agenda. We will deliberate after the public hearing is closed. That part of the meeting is not open to the public for public comment. It is just for comment by the commission members. With that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup, and I appreciate the applicant's patience in the last hearing. So without any further ado, we'll hear calendar number 15, 2021, Corbush. If you're, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Thank you for your time. Kevin, thank you for your flexibility. I understand it's not easy to be doing this from a vehicle. So anyway, my name is Sean Walters.
No problem.
Yep. Thank you. Sean Walters, landscape architect, working with Wagner Pools on this project. So I'd like to begin just by touching real quickly on what actually is a variance, right? So in recent years, the courts have been very clear that a variance must be predicated on a hardship that is inherent in the land. And that's what this application is about. And we're not looking for a variance for a swimming pool. What we're looking for a variance to locate a pool in an area that would otherwise not be allowed. So I just want to be very clear about that. It's not about what, it's about where. And with regard to the importance of a swimming pool, right now in this current landscape, socio-political landscape, it's never been more important than it is now to have a way to relax safely and comfortably in your own home. And no other feature provides as many ways to do this as a swimming pool. Swimming pools afford recreation, meditation, relaxation, exercise, and they also provide for small, responsible social gatherings. And for many taxpayers, this is an incredibly good feature for this, very conducive to all of those points. So with regard to what are we proposing, it's a 14 by 35 pool from 3.5 feet to 6.5 feet deep. Now, this would be considered to be on the small size, any smaller, and the pool loses some of its abilities to facilitate the aforementioned activities, recreation, relaxation, so on and so forth. It's 6.5 feet deep was intentionally done. A typical pool is 8.5 feet. This will minimize the encounter with rock should that happen. So we're being very mindful of the site and various features and things that we might run into, and we're doing everything we can with what we're proposing to minimize environmental impacts. So the patio itself, by the way, again, small pool, the patio itself is dry laid as opposed to on concrete. And the significance of that is that a patio on stone dust has a crushed stone base underneath it. Water that lands on the patio can filter through the joints of the stone dust and accumulate in this reservoir of crushed stone. And crushed stone, like ice cubes in the glass, will dissipate the water over a larger distance, thereby allowing for greater infiltration. The significance of this ties into, I understand we have some opposition from a neighbor, and there's a letter from an attorney. One of the concerns is flooding. And I also understand that some images were provided, which, by the way, that was a 100-year storm event. And it was on top of the third wettest season in recorded history. So I think it's pushing the envelope a little bit to bring that type of flooding into the mix here. It really has no bearing on this project. But what I'm driving at with this dry laid patio, which, by the way, has also been engineered with a rain garden for stormwater management. And what I'm getting at here is that the post-construction footprint of this site will be less environmentally detrimental with regard to flooding than existing conditions. And I can say that quite confidently because the water level of a pool is actually 6 inches below the coping. 6 inches actually happens to be just about the quantity or volume of a 100-year storm. So that means that a swimming pool can actually act as a detention basin. The water then can subsequently evaporate and return into the hydrological cycle after the pool captures it. So in a severe event, the pool is actually going to lessen the impacts of the flooding we saw in the images provided by the neighbor. It's really important for me to explain that. And in these suburban areas, everything is lawn, and lawn is one of the worst things for environmental considerations, right? Everybody has these large expanses of lawn. The soils are compacted due to maintenance and recreational activities. Compacted soils do not allow for infiltration, therefore stormwater runoff, the velocity of which actually increases, and flooding on adjacent properties increases. And exasperating that is the fact that lawn has fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, and herbicides, not to mention pet and animal droppings.
Hey, Sean, can I ask you to focus on a couple of things here instead of
Sure.
focusing on lawns? Can you first, you mentioned hardship with the property, that
Yes.
you're right, the first prong. Can you focus on the hardship on this property?
I can, yep, I was driving to that, but basically what we have here, there are several, but first and foremost is we have an odd-shaped lot in previous front lot line that govern an extremely unusual set of setbacks, one of which is 90 feet. This is an R1 zone here, by the way. A 90-foot setback is almost unheard of. And when you take a look at the lot itself, may I share my screen with you? Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, take a look at this lot. We have basically one side setback. Everything else is rear and front setbacks. That's extraordinary, unusual. That's just very, very unusual. We have a 90-foot setback on this lot line right here.
So what is,
Again,
do you know the size of the buildable area? What is the acreage of the buildable area? Because yes, the setbacks create a unusual shaped buildable area, but it's not a small lot. So what is the size of the buildable area?
2,105 square feet, as shown with this very, very light gray hatching. And this is everywhere where you don't have septic setbacks. By the way, there's a 10-foot, there's a utility easement running through the middle of the backyard, which I would argue as another hardship inherent in the land. And so what happens is, we pulled this pool, we made it very narrow at 14 feet, and we've pulled it as close to the house as we can. We're not trying to throw this thing out in the middle of the yard. And what's also very interesting about this, if we just take a quick look at a Google image, and by the way, when you Google 37 Cedar Gate Road, it gives you completely the wrong address. But this, by the way, is 37. The pool goes here. The oppositional neighbor is down here at 60, and here's 56. What's interesting is that what is zoned as the front yard of this property, by the way, the front really is out here near Cedar Gate Road, right? This so quote unquote front yard with a 40-foot setback, which is really what's giving us a problem here, is actually looking out over the side and rear lot line of number 56 and the rear of 60. So when do you have a front yard that directly abuts somebody else's rear yard? This is an unusual circumstance, and really what the bulk of this variance request is predicated on. Again, we have a former front lot line here, and governing this 40-foot setback, we understand all of that, but the truth is, it's really not the front of the residence for all intents and purposes. And then when you throw in the fact that we have a large unbuildable wetland area with an associated upland review line, and also in response to the attorney letter, we also went out of our way to avoid any upland review or EPC involvement. So nothing we're proposing is harmful to the wetlands.
You know if any of the zoning regs that would have changed the setbacks on this changed, or that any of the zoning regulations that impose what you claim to be unusual setbacks were changed subsequent to the construction of the home?
That I could not speak to. I can tell you that I
The home is
bounced the.
properly set. It looks like it was properly set on this lot, given the setbacks that are imposed by the regs. So it seems like when the homeowner, and I don't know if this is the original homeowner or not, but whoever built this house, built it knowing what the regs were. And when the current homeowner bought the house with the same regs that are in place now.
Sure, but
So when they bought the house, they would have known, well, we're gonna get to the location of the pool, but when they bought the house, they would have known that the pool that's being proposed now is inconsistent with the regs that were in place when they bought the house, and perhaps when the house was built.
that
Right.
may be well be for a previous builder trying to do what they're doing with the residents. As far as the new owners not being involved with this kind of stuff or in this line of work, would have no idea. They just know that they bought a 1 acre lot in a nice, wooded area in Darien.
Can you
But-
talk to the other possible location? Because as you know,
Yes.
staff has highlighted another area that, at least on the site plan, looks like a possible location.
Sure.
I assume you disagree.
Hang on one second
do.
before we get off the setbacks topic. Woody, can you explain this setback situation a little better? Is this a staff interpretation of the regulations that determine these setbacks? What's the driving factor here? Because usually on a flag lot, that wouldn't be a rear yard setback. So what's going on here?
It's the circumstance where a portion of this lot is behind another lot.
Right.
Therefore, we apply an extra 50 feet. The actual request here is 23.1 feet in lieu of 40, because part of the pool is within a 40-foot applied setback and part of it in a 90. But the closest point is actually 23.1.
So
Okay,
even
but
if it were 40, it would fail.
hang on a second, Gary, and explain the 40-foot rear setback to me.
Okay.
Because that looks like a side yard, not a rear yard. That's why I'm confused why that's a rear setback.
Because as the property lines come away from the road, and we define those as sides, once they turn an angle like this, like 60 degrees or more, then it flips to a rear designation, and we apply the 40-foot rear instead of a 25-foot side. And then the portion of this lot that's directly behind the adjacent lot, we add the extra 50 feet for the 90. I don't know if that helps, but.
Yeah, that does help. So look, I'm going to be completely honest with the applicant. A variance for a pool or for any accessory structure is a very difficult one to have granted in the first place. Gary will point to our last meeting where we granted a variance for a generator. I see that as a safety issue, and it's a different issue than a recreational structure. Your clients may be better served asking that these zoning regulations be looked at by the Planning and Zoning Commission, because it does seem like a massively unfair interpretation of the regulations as it relates to this law. And that is certainly something that's within the Planning and Zoning Commission's purview to address. But trying to get a variance for this hardship is really difficult, because and Kevin will correct the verbiage here, but beyond the hardship, it's got to be the minimum adjustment necessary, and it has to deprive you of substantial use or Kevin, what's the language there I'm struggling with?
Denial of which means that the property cannot yield a reasonable return, is what
Yeah.
or reasonable use.
Substantial justice in the use of the property.
Right.
Yeah. So when we may get over the hurdle of a hardship, but then when we look at the other two elements of a variance, whether this was a pool or an addition to the house or a barbecue grill area, like, it's really hard to argue that the latter 2 points of the justification for a variance. So, I'm not pre-decided on this. Obviously, we're going to hear the application, we're going to hear the opposition, but it just, there may be a better route than trying to get a variance for this, because it's a really tough application to approve. Now, with that being said, I do want to hear, Gary, your second question, which was, okay, what is the issue with the alternate location? Explain that to us and walk us through that.
Sure. So drawing 3 on the first page of the set shows 2 outlines, same pool. In the only buildable area, mind you, we've got a 25-foot setback for the leaching fields on the septic system that we have to honor. So in either case, the pool is too close to the house. It's not practical or safe. And for all intents and purposes, we would still be over the, to really make this work, we would have to go over the 25-foot side setback line as shown up here. So it's not a viable location. You can't put a pool right up against a house like that. There has to be a buffer, a little bit of space between the two. And again, if we make this pool any smaller, we're looking at a spool or a spa, and that's not what we're after here. So we did explore that, yes. And then, of course, utility easement in the back, septic system. This is a upland review line for the wetlands, wetlands themselves right over here. We looked at it all, and this really is for not just, not to mention a pool over here, by the way, is very detached visually from other areas where people will be outside. There's a safety concern. You have the kitchen window over here. It looks out over the pool, as is often the case. So you have to maintain a clean line of sight with the pool users. This is also the north face of the residence. Not really a great location for a pool. It's going to be shaded all day. So there's a number of reasons, but first and foremost, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't work in this remaining buildable area.
Okay. And those representations about distances and things of that nature, that's based on the building code?
Yeah, well, my knowledge as a landscape architect and pool builder, I do a lot of presentations in Westchester County, and in many cases, there are minimum setback requirements from structures. For example, in Larchmont, a pool as an accessory structure can't be closer than 10 feet to a building.
Yeah,
And
well, we're not in, it'd be good if we can answer that for Darien.
Terry, hang on a
Yeah,
second.
but what I'm saying is this is predicated on common sense, and I agree with it. Regardless of what town you're in, a pool should not be right up against the house.
Okay,
You're creating
Sean,
a pinch point where people can fall in. People don't always want to walk around the pool and end up in it. And you need to give them enough room to safely navigate around the entire structure so that there's not an impasse.
excuse me for a second. Woody, is there a setback from the house in the town of Darien for a pool?
Not that I know of, no. I don't believe there's a building code either. I mean, there are interior pools that are completely enclosed in a house.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay. All right. So, yeah, so Mr. Walters, that's, it's helpful in its point, but to say that it's not a viable alternate location, we need some reason based on the local building code or the national building code that we adhere to, that justifies that. You can't just come in and say, no, we looked at it and it's not a great spot. We need more than that to sort of make a determination that it's not a viable spot. I understand the 25 feet from the septic galleries. That makes sense. And I do believe that's in our code because I've dealt with that issue. But as far as where it can go in proximity to the house, I don't. That's not a rule. That's a local rule. So I think we need, what you may want to consider is continuing this application and actually finding that data out and presenting that to us.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that, but I can also tell you that I would not, as a landscape architect, for safety reasons, put a pool that close to a house. That's unacceptable. So I just wouldn't do it. It doesn't make any sense. You're going to end up with accidents. you have these pie-shaped wedges between the pool and the house, pinch points for maintenance equipment, the guy backing a mower in or trying to turn around. It's a recipe for disaster, and I just wouldn't set up an owner or people on their property for that. It's not safe.
Look, I think it's an interesting point. I do think what Mike raised earlier is perhaps more relevant. You've talked about why there's not another area, and that is something for us to consider. I don't know that we need to hear more about it, because in the end, we're going to decide whether there's a hardship and whether what you're proposing is the minimal adjustment necessary to avoid the implication that Kevin noted as to the, your right to use the property.
Right.
And then, of course, we need to decide whether the regulations themselves, which are on the books and apply to many lots around this town, frankly, perhaps my lot, are themselves create a hardship, but those are the regulations.
Yeah, I mean, they seem fairly draconian in application to this law, though. But you're right. I agree with you, Gary, 100%. The regulations are the regulations. That's what I'm saying. A better avenue for this might be to address it through planning and zoning and say, here's the unintended consequence of the regulations that you passed as relates to this lot. Can you either grant us some sort of reg amendment or an overlay zone for this lot, or some other avenue, because the rules on variances really have handcuffed us as a board to what we can and can't approve. And so,
but even on that, Mike, 20 feet might still, I don't know what setback you would apply that would permit 20 feet in a 1 acre zone.
Well,
yeah, no.
If I may, it's 23, it would be smaller. We could shift this and rework this, but we have one side setback right now. If we had another one at 25, we could.
Right, I'm just looking at the plans in front of me.
Right.
That's not to say it can't be revised.
But we could work with that. If we had, but right now this is all side and rear setbacks. It's bizarre. So if we had another side setback, we could work with that and maneuver this pool a little closer and do what we had to do. In this case, it's just so completely out in left field that 2 or 3 feet don't really matter. We found what we feel is the best location for the pool. And I see your point about this being possibly planning and zoning approach.
Even if you demonstrate hardship, then you have to get over the second prong, which we may be struggling.
So why don't we do this, Mr. Walters, if it's okay with you, why don't we hear from the opposition? We'll reserve some time for you if you'd like to rebut anything that they have to say. And then we'll open this all up to questions from the board, if that's okay with you.
It sure is. And I just want to mention real quickly that Wagner Pools does not blast. This would be either mechanical rock chipping or drilling with bentonite clay. No blasting. That's dark ages stuff.
Yeah, that's a decision on the builder, and if you're allowed to build it, the methods you use for building it are within your discretion. So
sure. I just want to pacify the oppositional neighbors so they understand there won't be any of that if this ever came to pass. So
okay,
I guess that could be put in a stipulation, Mike, if we were to approve it.
Yeah. Okay. Is there someone here? I'm assuming Amy, you're here for the opposition.
Yes, Amy Sabatakis, Rucci Law Group. I represent Ned and Nancy Farrington, who live at 60 Cedar Gate. I believe that Ned and Nancy are on the call, but I don't know that they have anything to add, or I can let them jump in if they need to. I think a lot of the issues that I raised in my letter have already been raised by the board, so I don't want to belabor any points. But basically, we have a want that is almost entirely in the setbacks. This isn't a situation where it's a pool that's, just a foot over the line, that on a very tight lot. I have seen other lots with 90-foot setbacks. It's not that unusual. When this house was constructed in 2003, these were the setbacks, and actually you can, looking at the house, you can see how it was designed to fit within the existing setbacks. The builder at that time, and I've seen this happen many times with new construction, builders will leave a pool site if they think that that's something that makes sense for the lot. The septic system could have been we've heard a lot about the septic system setback, but the septic system could easily have been located differently so that it didn't create those additional setbacks. Those are really self-created. It's not an excuse to say that these buyers didn't know what the setbacks were. That's something that's very easy to find out when you're buying a new house. It's on the land records, and I don't think that that is a reason why we should allow something that is not normally allowed by this board. I've myself had a number of applications where I've told clients not to bring them. I've spoken with staff and been told, like you said, for accessory structures that are wants, their hardships, the hardship may be there as far as the lot that you can't get what you want, but that's not a legal hardship, and that's not a basis for a variance. I would just say, to the extent that the applicant did discuss the photo that I submitted as far as the ponding, I agree that was a tremendous storm. But what I guess I was getting at is, even beyond the fact that I don't think a variance is appropriate in this case, there are other pieces of this application that are missing. There is no stormwater retention plan as part of the application. There's nothing to show that the grounds in this area are appropriate for the, be it not blasting, be it however it is that they plan to chip away at the rock. But there is quite a bit of ledge in this entire area, which is why when the house was built, there was a great deal of blasting. And let's see.
Amy,
Yep.
can I just get some clarity? That photo, that pooling of water,
Yes.
that's on your client's property or on the applicant's property?
That was my client's property. The line of pine trees is the actual property line. So it's really right behind where this pool is proposed but on my client's property, correct. And again, I'm not trying to say that there's any responsibility for that. I'm just saying that there is a water issue in this area, and that I fear will be exacerbated by more impervious surface. And maybe it won't be. Again, I didn't see a drainage report in the file.
Yeah, so we generally don't require that. Woody, question for you again. Sorry to keep relying on you tonight, but as part of the permitting process, though, don't they have to have some sort of stormwater management program? I mean, that's generally not part of the variance application.
Sometimes we get them to essentially try to show that the project's been well thought out and there won't be any negative effects, there won't be any water flooding issues. So we don't actually require them, but if there's 1,000 square feet of new impervious surface, there would have to be an engineer between the pool area and the coping patio around it, which may be the case here. So yes, once they get to a construction permit, there'd probably be another step to verify what drainage is going to be installed.
If I may, real quickly, I have on my screen our engineer's report and the engineered stormwater management system. We did submit all those materials.
Okay. All right. So, Amy, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Did you have anything further?
No, like I said, that wasn't really the focus of our objection. The focus of the objection is really that the variance simply isn't necessary. This is an accessory. The house has been used for many years without a pool and enjoyed by the prior owners. It was designed by a builder to fit within these setbacks. And I just, based on the law and the prior applications of this board, I can't see any justification for allowing a pool that is, as you can see from the plans, almost entirely in the setbacks, not just a little bit. It's basically entirely in the setbacks.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, did you have some professional capacity with the builder of this property? Because you represented that it was, intentionally built within the setbacks or to these setbacks. Is that based on actual knowledge, or is that just a supposition?
I'm sorry, I should be clear. That is a supposition, but it's the shape of the house. If you look at the shape of the house and the setbacks, it's, touching the setback lines in numerous locations, and it's not a rectangular house for that reason, because it's not a rectangular buildable area.
Yeah, and that was the crux of my questioning of the applicant as to the knowledge of these setbacks and when perhaps regulations were put in place, because it seemed that the regulations requiring these setback lines had to be in place when this building was built.
Yeah, Mike, for sure, it's a supposition, and I apologize if I indicated
that's
that
fine.
I had greater knowledge than that.
I just wanted the record to be clear.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Okay, Sean, anything? Sorry, Amy, you're good, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Sean, anything you'd like to present further? Obviously, the drainage report is part of the file. We recognize that. There's going to be a whole aspect if you do get approval when you do the permitting process. The town does a very good job of making sure you have an appropriate drainage program. You've got to maintain your stormwater runoff on your own site and all that sort of stuff. So that will be part of the process if you get past this part. Anything further you'd like to present, Sean?
Only that, I do understand with the flooding, the environmental, there's a wetlands nearby. As a landscape architect, I care tremendously about these sort of issues. So we did opt for the rain garden, and you have a mitigation planting plan on L301. These are all native species. It's all a nod to the nearby wetlands, even though wetlands is not under review here. And the rain garden has been strategically placed between the proposed pool and the residents at 60 Cedar Gate as a way to also further mitigate potential runoff onto the abutting properties. In this case, particularly the oppositional neighboring property.
Okay. Let's start with Barb. Barb, do you have any questions on this?
No.
Jeff, do you have any questions? You're muted, Jeff. Oh, okay.
All right, the sharing the screen is messing up my monitor. No, I don't have any questions, Mike, and I agree with you. I think I agree with this 90-foot little bit egregious setback. So I do think that they should go to P&Z and see if they can't get an overlay or something along those lines. That's what I think.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Gary, I know you had some questions through the application. Anything further? You're muted. Sorry.
Oh, I interjected mine throughout. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin?
No, you all interjected mine. Thank you.
Actually, I have one last question. Amy, you said that you've seen this 90-foot setback before.
Mhm.
Tell me about that. Where have you seen it? How's it worked?
I mean, has it worked or not worked? I don't know. It is what the regulations are when you've got a lot behind a lot.
Yeah.
Come to my house, Mike.
You add 50 to the 40.
Come to my house. I have a 90-foot setback.
You do?
As a flag lot.
Yeah.
I think Woody, that's correct, right? You've been to my lot.
Yeah, you're
So-
behind it. But
So is that-
I would
let me
say,
just, oh shucks. Let me just point out there's dozens and dozens of rear lots, interior lots, whatever you want to call them in town, that have this same application of an extra 50 feet. And the purpose, frankly, is to have the front lot's rear yard have a little bit more space for the back lot, so that there's a little bit of room for each to have some peace and harmony with the use of their land. And it's worked out pretty well, but it's certainly not unusual.
Okay.
yeah, I guess
And-
to answer the question, I would say almost every flag lot that I'm aware of ends up with this scenario.
I think we had an application up near Talmadge Hill that also had a flag lot, and that was one of the features in drawing the buildable area was that 90 foot.
Yeah, okay. And it's, okay, yeah, it's from where it's behind the lot in front of it. It's interesting. So,
Well, if you think about it, if we had frontage, if you have frontage, you basically have your front, the road, and the house in front of you's front to separate the houses that are facing each other. And here sometimes you have rears and back and front. So that's why that was, I think, the regulation. I think what he's correct is it's applied in many locations in this town as it is on this lot.
yeah. Yeah, okay.
And if it should be, I agree that that's a P and Z issue. I don't think that and we can do this in deliberation, but in this case, I don't think it creates a hardship unique with this land because it's just it'd be saying like the 40-foot rear setback in a quarter acre creates a hardship because you can't put a pool there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll throw this back to the applicant. We could do one of two things tonight. We can close this hearing and deliberate. Or because the sticking point for me is also going to be the alternate location. And I understand in your professional opinion, that's not a good spot for a pool, but we sort of need facts and concrete setbacks and an actual sort of drawn out location that shows how that, how the zoning regulations make that a bad spot for a pool, because as it's drafted by Woody, quite inartfully, but still drafted well, Woody. It shows a possible alternate location that wouldn't require a variance, and that is something that we look at when we're determining whether there's a variance or not. Now, that being said,
Although I asked that question, I'll challenge that because I still wonder, let's assume, arguendo, that there's no other location for a pool here.
I was just getting there, Gary, which is even if you prove to us that that's not a viable location, you may be wasting another month coming back because it's really tough to approve this variance because of the additional two prongs to that test, right? Like even if we get over the issue of a hardship, is a pool really a substantial injustice to the use of your property? Is it the minimum adjustment necessary to do a pool that is, I'd say 95% within the setbacks? It's a really big ask from the town. So, that's, I'll leave that up to you as the applicant, but I think the better course of action for this application is to try and get relief through planning and zoning. And I'm not saying that they'll grant any relief. They may say, you know what, we do this all the time. This is what it is. But I think the unique nature of this lot and the way, some of the curves and the extra land and you've got probably a stronger argument with them than you do with us.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm okay with that. I think that's a better approach. I don't think there's any reason to string this along. I think it's more of a planning and zoning to approach them and request an overlay. And like you said, we have this extra space up here contributing to
extra land. And it's a shame because it's almost completely unusable land where,
I agree. Yeah,
and,
it's
maybe
parcel and you can't do much with it.
Yeah. And maybe they require some sort of, give back or trade off or something. I would also talk to the neighbors. It's really nice. Look, neighbors oppose applications, and that's something that happens. But what the boards like to see is at least a dialogue. So, if if you reach out to the opposition's counsel and sort of just talk about what would work for them, what's a better plan, maybe they want more screening, maybe they want less screening, things like that. I think as an applicant, it's really helpful to the commissions and the boards to have, yeah, we're coming in here and we talk to the neighbors and we're trying to do the right thing because we like our town and we like our neighbors, and we want a plan that works for everyone. And so that's sort of probably above and beyond what I should be giving you for advice, but that's my thoughts on the application.
No,
The
I
only person I did-
understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate the input. I mean, it's, I understand.
Yeah. The only person I didn't ask if they wanted to speak, Woody, did you have anything further you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
All right, sorry about that. I asked you all the questions and then forgot to give you a voice.
Good.
So with that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing, is what I'm hearing from Sean?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Walters, would you unshare your screen, please?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Is this the red X up here? I don't want to like just terminate the meeting. I'm going to try and see what happens here.
Thank you.
Nope, that's definitely not it. Give me a second.
No worries. It's just a little distracting to me. Sorry.
It is
Yeah,
to me too at this point.
Sean, if you drop off, we'll wait for deliberations to get you back on here.
Okay, all right.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, I told him to give him a minute just to log back in. Okay, Sean, you're back in?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll go on to deliberations. Obviously, this is a non-public part of the application. Anyone want to kick it off? Gary, you seem to have some strong opinions.
Well, I don't think they meet any of the requirements of getting a variance. I don't think they've satisfied a hardship. I think this is the application of the zoning regs, which is consistent the way it's applied throughout the town, as far as I know. I don't think they've, I think if you don't get over that hurdle in this case, I don't think you get very far. Assuming arguendo that they did have a hardship, I don't think you hit the second prong. I don't think this variance is necessary to address any hardship because by denying it, we're not really impacting their enjoyment of their property in any meaningful way because what they're asking for is a pool, and I don't think we've ever granted, and I don't know if any other town has in Connecticut granted a variance for a pool. I applaud the novel approach, saying that in today's, I don't think I would have called it socioeconomic, I think I would have called it health crisis. We're all living differently, but I don't think that we should essentially make law by suggesting that by not having a pool, a homeowner doesn't have appropriate enjoyment of the value of their property. So I don't see how we pass this, even if there were no alternative placement.
Yeah, I think it's a draconian application of the zoning regulations with, like, I sort of get the 90 foot where there's like a right of way that's, 30 feet wide that goes back to the property, and it's 25 feet wide and it's a traditional flag lot. But this is like, I don't know, I didn't look at how many feet wide, but there's a swath of land that they own in front of them that gives them frontage. And it just seems like, maybe if you've got double the width of an access way, you shouldn't be applying this 90-foot rule. I don't know, but I think that that's a planning and zoning decision. I don't think that's a ZBA decision. I agree with you. I think that you could, if you wanted to, you could probably find a hardship here. It's a stretch, but I think you could make that argument just because of the draconian application of zoning regs, but it's tough. And then when you get to the other two prongs of the analysis, I don't know how a pool would ever satisfy that, even with COVID. So Woody, it would be interesting. We granted a variance for an accessory. We just granted a variance for the accessory garage on, oh God, what's that road? It's Sedgwick, and you take a right, you're on Mansfield, and they were right on the right. Gary, you were on the application.
Yeah, that was Highland Avenue. The issue there was connecting the house to the garage actually created a glitch with the way the setbacks are considered with what was an accessory, now it's attached. Perhaps a different circumstance, but if you wish, let me just say that with this kind of pool subject or anything else, if it would help, we can research previous decisions, how many times pool applications have come before us. We can't do it now for this application, but I'm saying if that really helps guide the board to be consistent with previous decisions, we could offer you more background.
I think that'd be interesting to know. I'm wondering, yeah, no, I don't think it's worth keeping the deliberations open. I don't think that there's unless someone tells me otherwise, I don't think that there's a real strong chance that this is going to get approved tonight. So there's no sense in keeping the deliberations open for it. But yeah, Woody, that would be interesting to know, pool/accessory structures, what sort of our history has been on that. Not that we're bound by it, not that it's, it just sort of informative purposes for the board. And so with all of that, I will make a motion to deny based on the fact that we didn't find the minimum, well, whether or not we found that there was a hardship, or whether, I don't think we need to make that determination because they don't satisfy the other parts of the test for the grant of a variance. But I will stick with Gary Green on the fact that there is no hardship because these zoning regulations were in place. It wasn't a change in the regulations that caused this. It wasn't the house being built prior to these regulations. And it does look very clear that the builder who built this built it within these zoning setbacks. So based on all that, I will make a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Gary, second. All in favor? Woody, that's a unanimous decision. Okay. Where's my agendas on the computer now? I think that's it. Woody, you've got approval of the minutes for the November 17th meeting. You emailed those around, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Who was that? Sorry, I wasn't looking.
It's me again, Gary.
Gary.
Gary seconds. All in favor?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin.
I don't think Kevin was in that.
Wasn't on it.
I wasn't at that meeting.
There might have been a different result.
It was me,
Okay.
Jeff, Gary, Dan, and Barb.
Correct.
Hey, let me bring up the long lost topic of election of officers.
So before you do that,
So
there's going to be a interviews next week of members that are being nominated to various commissions and boards done by the new Board of Selectmen. They are interviewing me and Matt Loria, I think his name is. Matt's been nominated by the Dems as a regular member of the ZBA, and I'm being nominated as a alternate. So keep that in mind. Not saying that Matt as a newbie should be considered it to be an officer, but I just wanted to let you know before Woody asked the question.
Yeah, no, I think if he's going to be a regular member, he should at least be able to vote, right? I think
That's
you should
fine. Yeah, you're right. You probably won't nominate him for a position, but he'd have the right to vote.
So Woody, I think we had this discussion last time. We'll push that one more time until we've got our newly elected regular members in place. And I think Barb, you're still an alternate. And then Gary's going to alternate. And Kevin, are you an alternate as well?
I think Woody would be the one who would know. I think I'm a full member. I think.
Kevin's a regular member, yes.
Kevin's a
Kevin's
full-
a regular member, Dan,
Dan is an alternate.
Jeff, Mike.
All right, so Woody, let's try and get a meeting in January or whenever our next meeting is, where we've got a full slate of regular members, and then we'll have
Let's hope so. Okay. We can carry on, that's right.
all right. With that, I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
I'll second that one too.
Here you go, Gary. All in favor?